You just had a 5-minute conversation about the weather, but 3 hours later, your brain is still analyzing the hidden meaning behind a slight pause. Psychologists call this the cognitive echo, a phenomenon where your mind repeatedly processes conversations and emotional meanings long after the event ends, drastically increasing your mental load. Research on language even indicates that while most people use conversation merely as a ritual for social bonding, your mind immediately shifts the purpose to problem solving, completely breaking the unspoken social glue. Hello, I am Dr. Arthur Sterling, and welcome to our discussion. If you are constantly told that you overthink things, or if you feel like you are speaking an entirely different language than the rest of the room, you are not broken. Today, we are uncovering the hidden psychological science behind why your brilliant mind often leaves you feeling completely alienated, and what the real cost of processing the load so deeply actually is. 1. The cognitive echo effect. For a typical person, a casual good morning is a closed loop. For you, it is an active investigation. You are not just hearing the words, your brain is automatically downloading the tone, the pitch, the micro-expressions, and the exact duration of eye contact. According to the American Psychological Association, information overload does not just come from scrolling through news feeds or answering hundreds of emails. It comes from emotional subtext. This overload significantly increases stress and cognitive fatigue, hitting deep thinkers much harder simply because they process massive amounts of invisible, unwritten social data. This constant background processing is the engine driving the cognitive echo we touched on earlier. Think of your mind like a high-powered submarine sonar. A colleague says something seemingly harmless, like, "I guess that plan is fine." Your sonar pings that sentence. Then, for the next 3 hours, you sit in silence, listening to the echoes bounce back. Was there a hint of resentment in that pause? Did their crossed arms contradict their verbal agreement? While they have completely forgotten the exchange and moved on to eating their lunch, your mental processor is running at 99% capacity, desperately trying to resolve a tiny social contradiction. This invisible labor takes a heavy toll, creating a massive disconnect in how you are perceived by the rest of the world. Because you're analyzing so many hidden layers of meaning, your real-time reactions naturally slow down. You pause before speaking. You look away to gather your thoughts. You hesitate to give a quick, simple answer because you see all the complicated variables involved. And this is exactly where the tragic misunderstanding happens. Psychologist Dr. Jennifer Conweiler notes that deep thinkers are frequently misjudged, especially in fast-paced workplaces where instant answers are valued over accurate ones. Your necessary silence and your quiet need for mental preparation are routinely misinterpreted. Co-workers and even friends mistake your thoughtful pause for disinterest, a lack of confidence, or even outright arrogance. They assume you are not engaged, when in reality, your brain is engaged on 10 different levels at once. You are just trying to filter all that complex analysis down into one normal, socially acceptable sentence. It is literally like trying to pour the entire ocean through a narrow garden hose. The sheer volume of emotional and logical data you are holding makes casual banter feel incredibly exhausting. You leave a brief meeting feeling completely drained, not because the conversation was actually difficult, but because your brain flatly refused to stay on the surface. But dealing with this invisible exhaustion is only the beginning. Because when your mental energy is constantly being drained by these echoes, it leads to a far more paralyzing problem the moment you actually have to make a decision. 2. Truth versus social connection. The average person treats small talk like a social handshake, but you treat it like a philosophical debate. According to Stanford psychologist Herbert Clark, human conversation is fundamentally a cooperative ritual designed for social bonding. For most people, chatting about the weather is just social glue. The actual words do not matter. The goal is simply to establish safety and connection. But if you are a deep thinker, you use conversation for a completely different purpose, to seek truth, uncover patterns, and solve problems. When a neighbor casually complains about the rising cost of groceries, they are just looking for a sympathetic nod. But your brain shifts into overdrive, analyzing global supply chains and economic policies. You offer a thoroughly reasoned, complex perspective. and suddenly, the room goes quiet. They think you are being unnecessarily heavy, intense, or even argumentative. You feel completely misunderstood because, to you, offering a deep, truthful analysis is your way of showing you care. You are offering a solution, but they were only asking for a ritual. This fundamental mismatch breaks the unspoken social contract, leaving you feeling alienated. But what happens when this constant overanalysis meets a situation where you actually have to make a choice? 3. The existential isolation trap. You might think that seeing every possible angle of a situation makes you an exceptional decision maker. The reality is often the exact opposite. When your mind is wired to analyze every hidden layer of a social interaction, applying that same intense processing power to a life choice can completely freeze you in place. Consider the famous research on choice conducted by Columbia University professor Sheena Iyengar. Her studies reveal that while people say they want more options, being presented with an excessive number of choices actually leads to severe anxiety and decision paralysis. For a typical person, having 10 different career paths or investment strategies to choose from is slightly overwhelming, but they usually pick the one that feels right in the moment, and simply move on. For a deep thinker, however, you do not just see 10 options. You see 10 entirely different branching timelines, each with its own cascading series of risks, rewards, and long-term consequences. You are not just trying to make a good choice. You are desperately trying to make the perfect choice to avoid a negative outcome that might happen 5 years down the road. You weigh the ethical implications, the financial stability, and the impact on your personal growth, all at the exact same time. This is a daily, exhausting struggle. While your friends are effortlessly deciding where to travel for the holidays or what car to buy based on a gut feeling, you are up at 2 in the morning reading 50 different reviews, cross-referencing reliability metrics, and calculating depreciation values. When you finally do make a decision, you are completely drained. And what does the outside world see? They see someone who is indecisive, overly hesitant, or anxious. They do not understand that your hesitation is not born from a lack of intelligence, but from an overwhelming abundance of foresight. But the emotional toll of being a high-level thinker goes far beyond just struggling to pick a car or a career. Because when your brain is naturally programmed to dig past the surface of every single issue, it eventually hits the bedrock of human existence. While the majority of society is perfectly content worrying about what they will wear to a party, or who won the latest sporting event, your mind inevitably wanders into much darker, heavier territory. According to the renowned psychiatrist Irvin Yalom, highly gifted and deeply analytical individuals frequently experience a profound state known as existential depression. This occurs because your mind naturally confronts the ultimate concerns of human life, death, absolute freedom, deep isolation, and the terrifying concept of meaninglessness. Most people have built-in psychological defense mechanisms that keep these massive, uncomfortable thoughts pushed safely to the back of their minds. They use small talk, entertainment, and daily routines as a shield. But your shield is fundamentally broken. You look up at a starry night sky, and instead of just thinking it looks pretty, you are suddenly overwhelmed by the vast emptiness of the universe and the fleeting, temporary not-to-re of human life. You start questioning the actual value of your daily routine. Why are we working 40 hours a week just to buy things we do not need? What is the actual, objective point of it all if everything eventually fades away? When you try to share these profound realizations with a friend, hoping for a moment of genuine connection, they just stare at you blankly and change the subject back to a reality television show. This is the existential isolation trap. It is the sudden, chilling realization that the things that matter most to you do not even register on the radar of the people around you. You are carrying the weight of the universe on your shoulders, completely alone, surrounded by a crowd of people who are completely oblivious to the burden. You feel like an alien stranded on a planet that only cares about the surface level. And the tragic irony is that the deeper you think in an attempt to understand the world, the more isolated from the world you actually become. So, how do you survive in a society that actively punishes you for processing it too deeply? 4. The core reason why. So, we arrive at the absolute core of the disconnect. Why do you constantly feel like a stranger in your own life? The definitive answer is a fundamental clash of operating systems. Your default setting is depth, precision, and nuance. But modern society runs on an entirely different engine. Its default setting is speed, efficiency, and superficial harmony. In a culture that demands instant answers, your thoughtful pause is immediately categorized as a flaw. Psychologist Dr. Jennifer Comweiler points out a fascinating dynamic in fast-paced workplaces. When deep thinkers require silence and preparation to formulate a robust idea, leadership frequently misinterprets that quiet processing as a complete lack of interest or competence. You are waiting to offer a fully baked, structurally sound solution, while the room is rewarding the person who loudly pitched a half-baked idea in 10 seconds flat. This bias is actually deeply cultural. Research by Robert McRae on aggregate personality traits highlights that Western societies overwhelmingly prize extroverted boldness and rapid-fire communication. We have built a world that rewards the loudest voice in the room, not necessarily the most accurate one. When you try to participate by offering a nuanced, multi-layered perspective, you are throwing a wrench into the machinery of speed. You are breaking the unspoken rule that says we must keep things moving at all costs. This extends to how you handle group dynamics. A fascinating study observing collaborative learning in medical students found that introverted, deep thinkers often avoid speaking up in large groups. This was never due to a lack of knowledge. It was caused by what researchers call attention anxiousness, and a strong preference for sharing complex ideas in intimate, one-on-one settings. When you are forced to rapidly defend a profound thought in a loud boardroom or a crowded dinner party, your brain short-circuits. The American Psychological Association notes that this kind of information overload significantly increases stress and cognitive fatigue, hitting analytical minds intensely because you are trying to process the emotional subtext of everyone in the room simultaneously. So, how do you bridge this massive gap without losing your soul? The secret is not to stop thinking deeply. The solution is treating casual connection like a foreign language and consciously learning to speak it. You must recognize that superficial harmony is not a betrayal of your depth, but a necessary bridge to reach other people. You do not need to unpack the ethical complexities of the global supply chain every time someone complains about the price of coffee. Sometimes, just nodding and agreeing that coffee is expensive is enough. You are simply paying the social toll required to travel on the highway of human interaction. Save your heavy cargo for the intimate settings where it will actually be valued. You are not broken, you are not too intense, and you are certainly not alone. You simply have an incredibly powerful engine, and you are learning when to idle and when to floor it. If this video helped you finally understand your own mind, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Until next time, keep thinking, but remember to let yourself breathe.